Hey y'all, welcome back, or welcome if you are new. I'm Danny and this is Homemaking Ain't Easy. So I feel a little late to the game this year, but it is time to plan our garden. So last year was the first time that I actually did a garden by myself from start to finish. We have had a garden for a few years. Most of the time, my husband was in charge of the garden because he has more farming experience, more gardening experience, and so I usually let him take that. Well, now that I am a stay-at-home mom, it's something that I want to contribute to the family, to take away from the grocery bill, to give myself a little bit of a hobby, and just because I think it's really important to know where your food is coming from and to have that security, especially like when right now the grocery prices are constantly going up, there's a lot to take into consideration when it comes to why I decided to grow a garden. But anyways, so I knew going into last year that it was going to be a learning experience. And I did learn a ton. I planted plants way too close. We still had quite a thriving garden despite my downfalls, but I have taken a lot of the information that I learned last year and I'm going to put it into good use this year. I did not write much down, which is one of the mistakes that I feel like I made. I mean, I have a good memory of things that happened with the garden, and I know the things that stick out most to me as far as things that I need to improve on, and I will be taking those into this year. But this year, I really do plan on doing a garden journal. I'm not gonna buy a specific garden journal. I'm just going to get a really nice notebook, and I'm going to write down, different things, like when we plant things, when they, how long it took them to grow, all those little things. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That'll be maybe another video. I figured I would bring you along with a garden planning process and kind of show you how we plan our garden. Now, I've told you in videos before, I am no expert at really anything. I dabble in things here and there, and I want to bring to you the information that I have learned from my life experience. Now, you have to figure out what works best for you. As any advice that I give you, take it, mull it over with you, your family, and decide if it's something that you can apply to your life that makes sense. And if not, that's perfectly fine. But if so, I love that I could help you. So, steps that we take when we plan our garden. Step number 1, deciding what to plant. Now, this seems like something super simple, but it's actually a little more difficult if you take into consideration a few things. So, number 1, last year I ordered my first seed magazine. A dear friend of mine, or my best friend, used these seeds before and had great success. She loved them, and so I looked at her magazine last year and I was like, I need that magazine. So I went and I ordered it, and it's Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. And I opened that book and was like, I want to grow everything. And while it's great to have that mentality and to want to grow a ton of stuff, I realized after growing all the things that I grew last year that you have to take certain things into consideration. So, number 1, what will you and your family actually eat? Now, you can grow the most beautiful candy cane beets in the world, but the question is, will you and your family eat them? If the answer is no, then you have wasted money, maybe. You have wasted time, and you have wasted valuable space in your garden that you could have used to grow something that your family would have eaten. And I'm just a person who really does not like waste. Growing up, a lot of times, like if I didn't eat what was on my dinner plate, my mom would say, there's starving children everywhere. And I guess that kind of stuck in, which is so true. You know, it's important to be thankful and grateful for what you have and not to waste, but also like it kind of has stuck with me. So when I throw away leftovers, when I, you know, don't use something and have to throw it away, it really bothers me. So, making sure that you grow what you and your family will actually eat is a huge part of deciding what to grow. I do like to throw in one vegetable or something that I would like to try. Maybe I haven't tried it, maybe it's something unique. A lot of times you can find some fun, unique seeds in these catalogs. I pick one that I would like to try and see if I can use. And that is kind of like how we try new things or experience new things, but it's still a small area where there hopefully won't be much waste and where we can try something new and say, hey, we tried it, we didn't have success, we did have success, we loved it, we didn't love it. But you know, just one I think is reasonable in this category. The second step to planning your garden is deciding what grows best in your area. So depending on where you are at, there are different, what they call zones. So I am in growing zone 7C, which means that we have a pretty decent growing season. So we can start, you know, there are certain vegetables that are what they call frost hardy, and you can start them before May, but a lot of your spring and summer vegetables you can get in the ground outside in May, the beginning of May, and you can grow all the way, you know, the spring summer crops you can grow all the way till like August, and which is usually about the time you harvest, and then you can usually get a fall garden into the ground beginning of August and harvest before the first frost dates, which are usually sometime in October. The first thing that you need to do is figure out what your growing zone is. I will link in the description box what I used to figure out what my growing zone specifically was. And once you figure that out, it will tell you a list of the crops that work really well in that growing area or that thrive well in that environment. So, you know, we tend to have pretty warm summers, usually pretty dry, and there is a lot of humidity around us, but, you know, we have to take all those things into consideration when deciding what will grow well in our area. Each seed packet has on the back, or at least the ones that I got from Baker Creek, we have everything from sprouts in. It tells you how many days it should sprout in. It tells you the ideal temperature. It tells you how deep to sow the seed, how far to plant the seeds apart from other plants, whether it's frost hardy or not, and then how much sun it should get. So like minimum to maximum. So last year I started my seeds inside in April. Now, I did not take into consideration some of the things that I was planting that were frost hardy, because I was thinking about how May is when the beginning of May is about the last frost date. Actually, last year it was April, but somebody from my family was telling me how our family used to grow, and it was, you usually don't put anything in the ground until after Mother's Day, because in our area you can get a late cold snap, and if you get stuff in the ground too early, you know, it can mess up that plant like that you have worked on and put all your love and care and affection into. But I will say this year I might play with that a little bit, because I noticed with ours, and there were probably so many factors that went into this, but I noticed with ours, we ended up harvesting, it took a little longer than what the seed packet took. And that's just partly our area, partly, you know, the spacing that I did on our plants. There were a lot of things that I feel like went into that I'm going to change this year to see if it's a factor. But, you know, worst case scenario, I throw some plants in the ground, when it says, like when the almanac actually says is the last frost date, and we get a frost and my plants don't survive, best case scenario, they do survive, they thrive, and it's not too late to throw some more in the ground if something were to happen and we were to get a late frost past the last frost date of this year. So I said all that to say, what will actually grow in your area? If you have a drier climate, there are certain plants that will thrive there. If you have a wetter environment, there are certain plants that will thrive there. So you really just have to look at what grows best. Once you find your zone, what grows best in that zone? And that's usually what we try to stick with. Now, does that mean that if there's something I really want to try to grow, I won't try to grow it because, you know, they say it's not going to work? No, I'll still give it a good go, but I might not invest as much money in those seeds. I mean, I'll still get good quality seeds, but I'm not going to buy 4 or 5 plants that they say won't grow well in this environment. I'll probably buy 2, maybe 3. So we'll see. But anyways, that is something that you really need to take into consideration. At the end of this video, I will share with you what we are going to be planting this year. It's a lot of what we planted last year and a few new things that we're going to plant this year. I will go over that with you at the end. The next tip or step in how we grow our garden is deciding how much you want to spend. Now, for every family, that is going to look different, clearly. This probably should have been step 1, but honestly, I feel like if you know what you want to grow, first you can kind of decide, well, how much money is it going to take, or are we willing to put into this to grow it? So I feel like those two kind of go hand in hand, but anyways, things that you need to consider when looking at this. The initial investment is always going to be more. And it's kind of hard at first to swallow it. Like last year, we spent quite a bit of money. Luckily, we had old wood from a building that we had before we moved here. And my husband took those and built some raised garden beds for us. That was basically free. He bought some nails, he bought some screws, and that was that. But filling those with the dirt was quite expensive. However, we had budgeted for that. We knew it was coming. We knew that we wanted to plant this garden. And so it was something that we were prepared for, but it's something that we won't have to do this year. We will add some new, some compost, some different things to our soil to help it this year. But that initial, I think it was like $700 in dirt that we had put in our beds is not something that we're going to have to do this year. And in the long run, it's going to bless us because last year we had a ton of vegetables. Like I did not have to buy vegetables from the grocery store for months. And it was worth it to me to save on our grocery bill with that initial investment, because this year it's all, it's all just the reaping of what we invested pretty much. So anyways, another part of that is, what are you willing to do yourself? So my husband has experience in building and carpentry, so he was able to build our raised garden beds. If you or your husband or your significant other don't have that experience, you might be willing to invest a little bit more money in, they have a ton of like prefabricated raised garden beds that you can buy. And while they look a little expensive, again, it's the initial investment that you're putting in. It's something that you'll only have to buy once. And if you're saving time on the learning process or time that you don't have to invest in that project, I feel like it's worth it. This year, the older I get, I feel like I'm learning that some things are worth investing a little bit more money. Could you do it cheaper? Absolutely. Do you have the time to do it? Probably not. Do you have the want to do it? Probably not. So if it is something that you are not willing to do yourself, just invest the money. If you have it, invest the money in buying it. And, all you have to do, most of those like prefabricated raised beds are well made and easy to put together. They have a ton of YouTube videos out there on them. And, you've invested in something that will last a long period of time, that probably has a warranty, and that you didn't have to like break your back to make, and it made your life easier. So that's kind of something that when you're figuring out how much your money you're wanting to invest, if you can build it at home, will it be cheaper? Likely, yes. Do you want to? Is it worth spending that extra money to have it done for you? Then do it. Do it if you got it. The next step when planning a garden, decide how much time you want to invest. This may actually change your first step of deciding what to grow. Because if you don't want to put that much time in, you might look at your list and scale that back a bit. You might say, okay, I'm willing to invest this much time, and that looks like a lot of stuff. That's going to take a lot of time to plant, to process, to harvest, all the things. And if that's the case, then that's okay. Like, you don't have, if this is your first garden, you don't have to, come out guns blazing. You can start growing just a few things. You can literally start with one garden bed and be good. Like, I get frustrated sometimes that I feel like right now we're in a time of an all or nothing mentality. So it's like, if you want to garden, you need to plant like so many plants, your whole yard. You need to till everything. You need to make a huge garden. Like, I think people, I love that people are getting more self-sufficient. I love that people are getting into homesteading and to growing their own food and into knowing where their food comes from. However, I don't want people to feel like, well, I can't invest that kind of time or that kind of money or that kind of, mental space into that, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Listen, if your garden this year, you can only take care of a tomato plant that sits on your back porch, like, if that's all you have time for, that's all you have time for. And let me tell you, you are still a gardener. You're still a gardener, friend, because you took that time, you planted that seed, you watered it, you nurtured it, you cared for it, you sung to it. I sing to my plants, I talk to them, I pray over them, all the things, but you took that time. You can still be a gardener too. And then maybe next year you get 2 tomato plants, but don't feel like you have to like go all in. If you only have time for a little bit, only do a little bit, because this is supposed to be something fun, something beautiful, and a good experience, a learning experience for you. So don't feel like if you don't have that much time to invest in it, you can't do it. Figure out how much time you want to invest in it and do it. Now, I will say, in deciding how much time you want to invest in it, there are different things, different factors that affect the time. So we have raised garden beds out there. We did that because from experience, when we did direct planting into the ground, when we tilled the ground, we put the seeds directly in the ground, or our seedlings or our starters in the ground, there were so many weeds. We were up to our ankles, knees, and weeds, and we did not have the time to go out there every single day and weed. And so our garden looked very eclectic, and we did still harvest a ton of vegetables and fruit from it, but it was just like, it got so overwhelming. It was kind of hard to harvest. So we realized when we started our garden last year that we wanted raised garden beds. Now, raised garden beds, last year I pulled a handful of weeds. We didn't have that many weeds that popped up or came up. And I think those were from like where we bought the grass from. I think maybe there were some little seeds that had flown in there from before, because we're not surrounded by trees or anything really. And so, my weeding time last year was like, nothing compared to in the past, how much we would have spent when weeding those gardens. And so that's why we decided, okay, we're going to invest the money in the dirt. We were going to invest the time in building those raised beds because we didn't want to invest the time in weeding. So that is something to consider when you're considering how much time you want to spend. How much time you want to spend on gardening may affect how much money you want to spend on gardening. Because if you decide, I don't want to do the weeding, then you might decide, I don't want to, I want a raised bed. And that's perfectly fine. Another part of that is, while it seems like gardening is a time-consuming thing, I can say last year, honestly, the first part of the year, like May, June, we started getting some harvest in July, but honestly, I walked out to my garden every single day, and that was actually extremely peaceful to me. It was kind of like a time, it was so fun. I would go outside and I would walk through the garden and I would notice a new little bud that was going to turn into a piece of vegetable, like a vegetable later, or I would notice something new about it each and every day. And that was super fun to me. And so it was really more relaxing. The time consuming part came when it was time to harvest. And even then, because of the way we did our garden, it wasn't all that time consuming. So really, I think sometimes you look at people who are doing this gardening in these huge gardens and you think, oh man, I don't have the time to invest in that. But it really depends on the size of your garden and all the things on how much time you're going to have to spend in that garden. But if you look at it as something that is a blessing, something that, is stress relieving for you, the time aspect kind of balances it out. I think I probably spent about 5 to 10 minutes in my garden when the plants started growing, like last year, a day, 5 to 10 minutes. When I was harvesting, it might end up being about 20 minutes, but we didn't have plants that really produced all at once. So I might get a couple vegetables today, a couple vegetables tomorrow, and each day I was bringing in a basket of goods, and it wasn't a bulk harvesting situation. The next step in how we plan our garden is we decide how much space we have to plant. Each plant, each vegetable, each fruit bush, fruit tree, depending on what level of gardening you're wanting to put into it will really depend on how much space you need. They all need different amounts of spaces. For example, our yard is basically a big hill. From our front yard, we have a little over half an acre, but from our front yard to our backyard, there is a tiny slither, which is where on one side we have our chickens, on the other side we have our garden. And so we are limited in the amount of things that we can grow. In the future, we are going to look into having a contractor come out, and we want to pay somebody to terrace I would like front yard, husband would like back. I think we're going to start on our backyard first to see how we like it and see how it does. But we're going to terrace our backyard so we have more room for growing, which is like basically where they do kind of like steps down. So, they'll come in and they'll probably have to excavate some, and they'll probably build walls, and we'll have like steps going up our hill in the backyard so that we can have some spaces to plant more. So we are limited in our space. Now, you don't have to have a ton of space to grow a garden. You don't have to have physical ground that you put your garden in. You can have pots. We have a green stalk. I've been literally calling it garden stalk like all night when I was planning this video and everything else. It is a green stalk planter, and it actually has its own watering system. You do have to put the water in, but it's got its own watering system. It has levels. They have a few different options. They have a 5-tier, they have a 7-tier. They have a few different options, and it is like basically a vertical planter. I have some other ones that I bought off Amazon that I thought were gonna be very similar. They were not. Don't feel like you have to have a ton of space to grow vegetables. You don't. You can literally grow them in pots. You can grow them in a green stock planter. The options are endless for how you can grow your produce or your garden. And it doesn't make it any less of a garden. You're growing your own food, and that's beautiful and that's wonderful. I just wanted you to know that, like, if you don't have the time, the money, or the space to invest in a garden, pots, green stalks are great investments for first-time gardeners. If it's something that you think you might not want to invest that much money in, those are perfect options. Or if you don't have enough space. And you could honestly, even if you have a small, limited amount of space, you could get several green stalks in there. Green stalks also have, they aren't cheap. I don't feel like they're expensive for what they provide, especially if you don't have a lot of space to grow in. And they have really good sales. Last year, they had a sale around St. Patrick's Day on their green planters. And they also had a sale around Mother's Day for their planters. And so you want to catch them on a sale, but they're great investments. And we had a lot of success when I was tending to our lettuces. That's what we grew our lettuces in last year. When I was tending to them, we had great success with that. How much space you have will determine how much you plant or what you plant. The next step in how to plan your garden is do your research on seeds. So I knew that my friend had great success with Baker Creek seeds last year. Y'all, my brain, sometimes I wonder about myself. But anyways, Baker Creek heirloom seeds. I knew that she had great success with that. And so I knew that was a company that I wanted to try. And every single seed that we got from Baker Creek produced well. Last year, I told you guys mistakes were made in the garden. And so I feel like they would have done even better had I spaced them better, had I given them more nutrients, more fertilizer. We had a serious pest problem with like squash borers and stuff like that. So this year, my focus is correct plant spacing and natural pesticide or pest diversion or whatever. And I think I'm going to do some research on ways to do that naturally as possible. But anyways, it's important to get good seeds because you're investing your money, your hard-earned money, or money that could be going to something else into these seeds. So while you might want to go with the 50-cent packs, and I am not saying there's anything wrong with those 50-cent packs at Lowe's or wherever, but I have not had success. Last year, we did all Baker Creek heirloom seeds except for 2 plants. One was an herb and one was strawberries. Let me tell you, those seeds were the only 2 seeds that we did not have produce anything last year. And so it really kind of drilled home to me that where you get your seeds from is extremely important when making your garden, when building your garden. So this year we will for sure order mainly from Baker Creek Seeds, but also there are a couple different types of seeds. So there are determinate plants, which are plants that all of the harvest, all of the yield, so like determinate tomatoes, all of those tomatoes will be ready at the same time. They will all produce and be ready to pick at the same time. And then there are indeterminate seeds, which are seeds that will produce, a lot of times they will produce as long as you are pulling from them. So the Baker Creek seeds that we got last year were indeterminate. So I had these jade cucumbers, y'all. They're like, I don't know. Let me look before I'm lying to y'all. They're jade cucumbers and they were really great producers, and you know, as long as I was pulling from that plant, I was getting so many cucumbers. It was so amazing. We are for sure growing them again. They put you in the mind of like an English, they're a China jade cucumber. I don't know. They're a China jade cucumber. These babies, let me tell you, they were like this long. If I have a picture, I'll insert it here. They were like this long. They were like English cucumbers. They were seedless. So like they were really great with salads, for snacking, for whatever. They were so good and they produced so much. So as long as I was picking those off, they were producing. When I stopped picking them off, actually a pest got to them and so they started having some problems. But when I stopped picking them off was when they stopped producing. But they produced all summer long. I did not have to buy a cucumber for 3 months, and that was amazing. So, you know, this year we are going to dabble with some determinate seeds because we want to do some canning. And to do that, you know, it's harder to do canning if you have indeterminate seeds, but they still have value. So we'll probably do some indeterminate tomatoes that we can use for salads and stuff like that. Like I think I still have some of our cherry tomatoes from Baker Creek Seeds, which did fantastic. But we will probably dabble in some determinate seeds. I've seen some seeds that people use from, forgive me if I mispronounce this or I'm not saying this correct, but it's Me Gardener, I think is what it's called. I will probably get some of those seeds this year because I think that those are where I saw the determinate tomato seeds and stuff like that. But we will for sure have some determinate plants this year because we do want to do some canning. But if you are worried about investing a ton of time, like the indeterminate is perfect because I feel like you can pick a few off this day, pick a few off that day. It's not like you have to block off a whole lot of time to harvest and, you know, process your food that you're getting. You can, you know, pick some here, eat them for dinner there. You know, we had beans several times last year, fresh. So it's a great option and it's important to know which kind of seeds you want, but do invest. And honestly, the seeds like these were very well priced. They were very well priced, and after you spent so much money, you got free seeds. So like if you spent this much, like I know I had 2 or 3 free seed packs that came in this order that I made last year. And I still have several of these seeds, but we're going to get some more because they just did really, really well. The next step that we do, and this kind of sounds a little weird at this stage with garden planning, but we make a plan for how we're going to harvest or save it. So this is a step that I actually have added this year because last year, you know, I had this beautiful garden. It was producing. We were extremely blessed, but there were things that were wasted because I didn't already have a plan on how I was going to save it. So like we had a ton of peppers that were coming in, like poblanos that were coming in at one time. And I didn't already have a plan for what I wanted to do with it or like how I wanted to harvest it. Like, was I making a sauce? Was I doing this? And so some of those peppers, or, you know, more than I would like to admit, actually got thrown out to the chickens or whatever because I did not have a good plan for harvesting. And you have put, by this time, when it's harvest time, you have put so much love and effort and energy, and you've talked to your plants, hopefully. You've prayed over them, hopefully. You've done all the things for this garden. Put in the work, put in the sweat, put in the equity, and you have these beautiful vegetables to show for it. But if you don't know how you're gonna harvest them, then guess what? I'm not gonna say it's wasted because likely you've learned something. Like, for example, last year, I learned something when I was having to get rid of those vegetables. I learned a tough lesson that like putting in the work and having a plan for harvesting them is extremely important. So have a plan. How are you going to harvest it? Are you going to make a sauce? Are you going to make a barbecue sauce with your poblano peppers? Are you going to make a hot sauce? What are you going to do with it? Have a plan for what you're going to do with these things, so that way when it's time to do it, you've not wasted your time, you've not wasted your money, you've not wasted that plant and that yield that you have gotten from that plant. So make a plan for how you're going to harvest it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Three Rivers Homestead does something every August, and it's called Every Little Bit Counts. And she might can 3 things of jam or 1 thing of salsa. She just makes sure she cans or saves everything that she can. In that process, she does it. And that is pretty amazing. And that is my goal for this year, is to participate in the Every Little Bit Counts. And if I do, I will share my journey with you guys and, share all the details about that. But I want to make sure that every vegetable that we pull from that garden is saved or used this year. Side note, on making a plan for how you're going to harvest your vegetables, some of that plan can be, hey, we're going to eat it for dinner. Like when we get those cucumbers in, we're going to use it for cucumber salad, for fresh salads, for quick pickles, whatever you're going to do. That's still a plan too. It doesn't have to be this huge elaborate plan, because I don't want you to think that it has to be this massive canning day, planning day. And that's why we're going to have a good mixture of determinate and indeterminate this year, because we're going to make sure that we have some that we can snack on and eat on regularly, and we have some that we can do hopefully a bulk canning session with. So don't think that just eating it for dinner isn't a plan. That is a plan. And a plan is better than no plan. Finally, the last step, that's it. You've made it to the end. The last step in how to plan your garden is take the leap. Do it. You might have taken every step up to here. You might have planned your vegetables. You might have planned your space. You might have planned out how much you want to spend, what time you're willing to put into it. You might have done all the things, how you're going to harvest it. And you might get to the end and be like, man, I don't know if I can do it. You know what? Do it. Last year, my first garden ever turned out beautiful. We produced so many fruits and vegetables. We ate so many fresh meals. I was able to take my kids out into the garden and they could pick what was going to be on their table. I wasted some crops, yes. I didn't have some crops thrive because I didn't plan for the pest control. I did probably not get as much yield from my garden last year because I put them too closely and didn't fertilize them often. But guess what? I did it. I learned from it, and I'm so excited about the garden that we are going to make this year, because I know what to expect, I know where to improve, and I know that I love it. So if you're hesitant after doing all the things, you can do it. Just do it. Just go buy that pot. Go buy that pot. Go get that tomato seed and plant it. There's your garden. You've taken the leap. And now all you have to do is care for it and nurture it and grow it. That's it. That's it. You'll never, even if you start one and it goes horribly wrong, you forget to water it, whatever, or you don't spend as much time in it as you thought you would, you have learned something. Either you've learned that you love it or you don't, and maybe that's not the thing for you. And you can seek out your local farmers or your local farmers market for the fresh vegetables and foods. Or you learned that you loved it. You learned that you love it and that you can provide food for your family and not have to worry about how much cucumbers or tomatoes are at the grocery store during the summer at least. And you found something that you love and enjoy and brings you peace. So you've learned something about yourself, no matter what. And you're likely going to get better at it if it's something that you want to pursue. So the last step is take the leap, Do it. You won't regret it. You won't. You won't. I promise you won't. Hey y'all, I'm about to edit the video that is supposed to go out tomorrow, and I realized that I did not actually record me telling you all what vegetables we are planning on planting this year. So here goes. We're going to do grape tomatoes. Those are going to be, remember earlier I was telling you guys, it was just a little bit earlier for you, it was a couple days ago for me, we explained to you guys, or I explained to you guys the difference between determinate and indeterminate. So we are going to have a mixture of determinate tomatoes and indeterminate tomatoes. So the indeterminate tomatoes are probably going to be things like grape tomatoes, things that we can put on salads and stuff like that, maybe a beefsteak. And then the determinate tomatoes that we're going to do are larger tomatoes so that we can make some sauces and different things like that. We are going to grow tomatillos. This is probably going to be the last year we grow them, depending on how they yield. Last year our tomatillos did great. They just didn't come all at once. And I might see if there's a determinate, you know, if I can get determinate seeds for tomatillos as well. I just haven't done enough research or like looked through it enough. We're going to do potatoes, but we're going to do baking, yellow, baby red, and sweet potatoes. Those we will probably do in the bags or in buckets. My husband saw a really neat way to grow potatoes in a bucket that made it easier to harvest. So we're going to play around with that. Of course, we will take you guys along for the ride with that. We're going to do onions, red and yellow, because we use a ton of those. The Chinese jade cucumbers, they did amazing last year, and we're going to do those as well. We're going to do pumpkin. I have several pumpkins that I did last year that we are going to plant again this year, and we are going to do a ton of pest control because the squash borers got to them like crazy last year. We're going to do yellow squash, zucchini squash, and spaghetti squash. We're going to do green beans. I'm pretty sure we can find determinate seeds. Last year we had some great success with some indeterminate green beans, but we're going to do green beans for sure. Brussels sprouts, last year we had a really hard time with caterpillars and butterflies. So this year we're going to see what kind of natural pest control we can do to prevent that. Cabbage, again, we had an issue with butterflies and caterpillars last year, so we have to do pest control with that. We're going to do lots of lettuce. We had a ton of different lettuces last year that we are going to do again, and I am going to regularly harvest these because they went to seed because I didn't regularly harvest, and it would have been fantastic for me to. I don't know what was wrong with me last year. I don't know. Like I don't know. I guess I didn't get the flow of it, and so this year I certainly plan on doing that. We're going to add romaine because we did not grow romaine last year. We're going to do herbs in the small planters, so we've got some Italian parsley, some chives, we've got cilantro, rosemary, thyme, and different things like that that we're going to grow this year. Also, I will do an unboxing of the seeds when they get here, and I will kind of like bring out all my seeds from last year, unbox the new seeds from this year so you guys can see them, see what they look like, and obviously we're going to be going through this whole process together. But we are going to plant some fruit bushes and tree like in our backyard line, and that's also where we're going to do pumpkins. We're going to probably like fence off a certain area so that our mowers, the people who do our yard work, do not mow them. But we're going to do blackberries, raspberries. I want to grow more strawberries this year, and we are going to do watermelon and cantaloupe, but I need to find a different seed company because last year I did the ones from Lowe's and they just didn't do it. We are going to do a ton of peppers this year. We're going to do cayenne. We've got a couple different kinds of bell peppers, habanero, jalapeno, and I want to try growing some green chilies because we do a ton of diced tomatoes and green chilies, and it would be awesome to be able to, you know, plant those myself and make them at home. We did go ahead and kind of play around with the idea of what we want in our winter garden, but I will go over that as we're planning and getting ready for that, like through the summer. But we for sure want carrots, broccoli, and we're going to use kale as a cover crop, and we want to do some greens. But I really have to do the research on when to plant the kale and the greens because there's a lot, y'all. As a second year gardener, there's so much that I still need to learn, and I'm planning on actually getting some books and reading them. I actually have a couple different books that I need to go ahead and start reading. And I want to get some books on pest control so I can go ahead and start reading so I can be more knowledgeable. Again, I told you, I always tell you, I'm not an expert at any of this. So some of the stuff I may be talking about might not be a thing, but I just share this with you guys because I want you to know, like, if I can do it, you can too. You don't have to be a master gardener to grow some vegetables in your backyard. But anyways, those are the things that we're going to grow this year. I have to pick my specialty crop. I think I want to play around. Last year we did some beets. I think I saw some yellow beets that looked really good that I might try. Or I might try, I don't know, I want to play around with one of the vegetables. I will let you know for sure. Maybe I'll do like rhubarb or something weird that I want to grow this year for like our specialty vegetable that we try out, that we may or may not like, but we're going to try and see. So anyways, that is the list of things that we're going to grow in our garden. It might seem like small, but we don't have that much room out there. And also, we want to only grow things that we're going to eat. So these are the things that we enjoy and that we eat right now, and that's what we're gonna do. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like these types of videos or found it useful, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell, follow my channel. I will have monthly garden videos coming for sure because we are hitting that season. I will take you guys through my gardening process from starting the seeds to getting them in the ground to getting our garden ready. My husband is expanding our garden this year, so I will show you guys how he builds those beds and what he does for my arches and all the things. Again, we're not experts, but that's okay. We don't have to be. We are learning, we are growing, and we're doing the thing. So come along with us. We would love for you to be here to watch our journey. Until next time, don't forget, homemaking ain't easy. Let's be for real.